Okay. Naren, I thought I'll start off with the appointments of the cabinet ministers for KZN. And as I mentioned, the IFP has five of the key appointments. The NC has three, the DA has two, but NFP's got one, yet they hold one vote. They turned out to be kingmakers. Now, a lot of people are looking and reading into this appointment because we talk about the government of national unity or a coalition government. It has been very fluid in the past. We know in Eastern Cape, in Gauteng, it's been changing all the time. So tactically, these big parties have, invited NFP to be part of the JNU, and NFP is holding the casting vote, and they've been given an MEC position, which is basically a very important position, social development, which deals with social grants, etc. How do you read this particular appointment? Having one seat in the parliament and being given an MEC's position, how do you read into that?
I would like to start with the cliche, every vote counts. So likewise, every seat is going to count. Now, the NFP became an unlikely candidate to become a kingmaker in the KZN provincial legislature. But it is critical. And as you mentioned, the split is 5-3-2-1. Now, we must understand, and I mentioned this on the show last week, that a coalition government, leave the term GNU out, the government of national, any coalition government is probably the most fragile and unstable form of government anywhere in the world. The reason they are formed is to prevent probably hung parliaments, and because no party has obtained a majority. So we have a minority government. And the very fact that we have a minority government means that parties have to coalesce to bring about a kind of stability in governance, whether it's provincial or national. And so it was the case. Now, the NFP, for whatever reason, would have had to have a MEC position, because being the kingmaker, they could determine they knew what they wanted, and they could not be excluded from the cabinet of the provincial legislature. Two important positions went to DA candidates, Francois Rogers and Martin Meyer. I know them personally. They're pretty capable people. And so hopefully, because he who controls the purse controls the country or the province. So let's see what Francois brings about to the table, because there's going to be massive demands. What we must not forget at the same time is that this GNU we talk about is transitional, because we got to look at 2029 as well, because they are friends now. 2029, what happens should the ANC or any of the other parties get a majority, a 50+1? All that was good and well is down the drain, because then we have an official opposition. We have the badgering that goes on in parliaments, as is the case everywhere in the world. But for the immediate or the current situation, I think there is some kind of political maturity in that the leaders have decided, look, let's work together. What is of concern to me in working together is that because of our toxic nature of politics in the past, they come from ideological backgrounds that are a little different. For example, the Democratic Alliance and the ANC. And let's take the wars outside the country. The ANC supported the Palestinians. But take the Ukrainian-Russian war. The DA supported Ukraine there, which was a minority country compared to Russia. So there's going to be a diversionist kind of attitude when they are voting in legislation or policies for the province and for the country. So the NFP now will have to decide how they're going to play the king in this cabinet,
Now, I just want to go a little bit further. We mentioned that, arrangements of this nature is very fluid, and experience has indicated so,
Right.
with the coalitions that took place in prior years, where you had, guys, after they dissatisfied with something, then they withdraw their support, and You have a new mayor coming in, etc. Now, by appointing, a party that has got one seat in the cabinet and appointing that individual into a ministerial position as an MEC, I think it's a master move to ensure that the GNU is stable in KwaZulu-Natal. And the reason why many critics are looking at it from that angle is because they know KwaZulu-Natal has got its own problems. And the fact that MK, through the ballot, have won the majority of votes, 45%, yet they are not controlling the province. It becomes very critical that the GNU functions effectively, and it mustn't be just a couple of months cabinet. Now, somebody asked the Premier the question, Tami Ntuli, that, or they were predicting that you may be in that position for 3 months and maybe one of the parties will swing. They'll withdraw and they'll join the opposition and then they'll collapse the existing government. Now, the IFP is fairly consistent and strong with the DA in their coalition of sorts over the years, and the ANC is now committed. So 3 of the 4 parties in KZN are very solid. And the NFP having a cabinet position and being given the recognition is highly unlikely they're going to be coerced to withdraw from this GNU to collapse, the appointments in parliament. Because people are asking the question, is that for a GNU to be successful, they must organize themselves in such a way that they continue to administer the province. Because KZN has been one of the provinces that has failed hopelessly in terms of service delivery. We know the municipalities, are close to administration, including the biggest municipality, eThekwini Metro. So there's sharp focus being given into improving service delivery in eThekwini, particularly with the water crisis, with the infrastructure collapse, etc. And those that have been appointed, they're there to bolster the provision of services in KZN, which ultimately will look at the municipality, and we'll talk about what impact this will have on the municipalities later in the program. But from the appointments and the manner in which the KZN cabinet has been formed and anticipated to run, do you foresee that cabinet being stable for at least the next 12 months so that they're in a position to start implementing improvement in service delivery?
My one-word answer to that is hopefully. But the point that you brought out with regards to the NFP, I think Premier Tami Ntuli had no choice. That was probably a non-negotiable thing, that the kingmaker will be excluded from the cabinet. It doesn't work that way, because that kingmaker can flip at any time. So could any of the alliance partners. The problem with, and you're right about one thing, KwaZulu-Natal presents one of the most difficult provinces in the country for various reasons. One of the largest populations as well in the country. And the MK, as we know it, we must remember the ANC is now a tripartite party, in the sense that not with the alliance with COSATU and all these South African Communist Party, but it's a tripartite party in terms of ANC, EFF, and the MK. They are breakaway parties. Had the MK not been formed to contest the elections, the probability of most of those people who voted MK would have gone ANC. We might not be talking GNU at this point in time. That's the reality. And a spattering with the other small parties. But now that it has happened, I wrote a little piece entitled The GNU. Is it a sarcastic euphemism or is it a contradiction in terms? Because at this point, it's all we've got. It's the very first time in South African history since 94 that Big Brother had to bow down to the little brothers and say, here's my hand in friendship. Now that friendship is tainted with the problems we've had in the past. How many times have the DA taken the ANC to court and won on various issues? Now, does that stop? It's a very difficult situation to be in, because if you're ideologically opposed to certain policies, how can you vote on it? And then your electorate, upon whom you've relied to put you into a position of power and governance, will turn against you. And that's the reality the leaders face. It's not going to be an easy road ahead. The truth is, yes, Mr. Ntuli could be removed within 3 months. That's the reality. Because a coalition government is not cast in stone, neither is it a legally binding aspect of governance. It's an agreement, at best, a gentleman's agreement that we will work together in the interests of the people. And look, whether we like it or not, South Africa has had a very terrible road in this last few years. The decline in our economy, the increased crime, the increased unemployment, all these have added to the burden upon a government that has come into power now. I'm being hopeful. I don't like to be a naysayer, but we need to be realistic at the same time. That what happens if there's a particular issue? And we must remember MK is going to agitate. Yes, you're right. They've got the most number of votes and they felt that they should be in power, but it doesn't work that way in a democracy. We're a constitutional democracy. It's the majority, not the majority votes. As long as you've got 50 plus one, that is the majority. Having 43% out of all the other parties who have lesser doesn't mean you're the majority in the government.
Now, we very well know that you got a strong opposition in MK and EFF. There's a 1 seat difference between the two, so they're quite strong, and they're going to make certain demands. But there are certain essential deliverables that are required in KZN, which has failed the ANC government. They're hoping by having this GNU with the DA and IFP. Obviously, EFF and MK did not want to come to the party. The issues of policies have in the main been dealt with. And what the president is talking about is the renewal policy, which is a sharp focus on improving service delivery. And he quoted, you're going to deal with the issue of crime, the issue of unemployment, the issue of water infrastructure, electricity infrastructure, dealing with, provision of employment opportunities for the unemployed, and various other challenges that the government and the provinces faced in the last 5 years, which culminated in the ANC's voting base declining. And as we well aware that MK was a move away organization from the ANC because the bulk of their members were formerly the ANC, including the EFF, failing which the ANC would have, won the different provinces, excluding the Western Cape, and even at a national level, they would have got more than 50%. So the current ANC regime is fully aware of the MK's agenda, and it's being, broadly led by Jacob Zuma, who is peeved about being criminally charged, and he continually states that he has been, unfairly charged, etc., etc. And then one of his conditions for being in a coalition government or a government of national unity is that they must deal with his issues, which is basically a challenging motive, being the leader. And then the MK has also got its own challenges. Like COPE in prior years, they had a handful of councillors that moved away, and they got as much as about 7% of the national vote when they moved from the ANC, but they disintegrated over time. So coming back to the stronghold of the MK in KZN, strongly followed by former President Jacob Zuma, those individuals form what the MK. They thought, it's a fait accompli for them to be back in power in KZN, and then they would be dealing with the municipalities, etc. And much to their surprise, this GNU worked against them. And as we are now predicting in the show, that based on the selection of the MECs, it would appear that it was a well thought out, process to ensure stability of the GNU, so that those that are in control will make sure that their differences are minimal and they sharp focus on the critical challenges facing the province. Because ultimately, you got 2026 coming up, the local government elections, and they have to prepare for that. And we will cover the area of concern that you raised, that what happens, in 2026, which obviously these parties are going to contest, and beyond, until the next elections. I suppose that, every party will take it in its stride, because that's the nature of coalition politics and GNU. So in terms of the issue of the challenges in KZN. What do you think are the critical challenges that this particular cabinet will have to deal with in terms of priority?
Look, infrastructure is very critical. There's a degenerative infrastructure that is taking place, whether it's water, roads, etc. Crime is on the up. But I just want to digress for a moment. We talked about 2026. Here's the thing. Every one of those four parties in alliance in the GNU of the KZN provincial legislature are going to put up candidates as for councillors in 2026 in the local government election. Now, what happens, and I use the term hypothetically, what happens if one of the parties wins most of the wards and whatever the case might be, even the large metro of eThekwini? How does that and how will that impact on the deliverables we're talking about? Because you must remember something, these are still individual parties who hold their own bona fides as a party on its own. This coalition is purely in the interest of stabilizing governance and not allowing anarchy or a hung parliament to take place, in which case no work will be done in the interest of the people. And coming back to the aspect of what is required to change things. Look, there's a lot of policies that will happen at national level that will impact provincially. For example, the NHI, which is supposed to be kicked off in 2026. There's been opposition to that for various reasons. It's a noble thing, the NHI. I would support it anytime. But we've got to be realistic that the country does not have the infrastructure or the wherewithal, the money to actually sustain or maintain that kind of thing. It's touted that it will cost about 500 billion rand a year. And it has also been touted that the money has to come from the added burden of taxing the taxpayer even more. If we look at our tax base, which is dwindling, then you impose greater burden upon the taxpayer, and that's going to be a critical problem. So, taking the one aspect of infrastructure, look at our roads, for example. Every single suburb and the main road, except probably the N2, even that too is a bit of a problem, although there's a lot of construction going on. It's dilapidated. It's potholes all over the place. That costs the people money because it's the wear and tear on tires and stuff. If we bring it down to brass tacks, that has to be changed. The consistent and persistent water outages. If I'm to believe what my dad told me, who was an EXCO councillor in 2008, that he had put a suggestion that they should change the water infrastructure, then it would have saved them billions. They didn't. And they came out with this idea that 2030 South Africa will be the most livable city in the world. To me, that's a joke, And what concerns me is that there hasn't been any definitive proposals or plans to put into place. Using that as an example, take the other aspect that is of high concern to South Africans and especially KwaZulu-Natal, crime. Crime is on the up. Innocent people. I was a victim of 5 house invasions, and my mom passed away after the second one. So that is a very critical aspect. If you recall, 30, 40 years ago, we never had boundary walls between each other. We lived as free people. Suddenly the world has changed. Now, thank God the Minister of Police is now not going to take up a position as Minister of Police again, Mr. Becky Taylor. I was vehemently opposed to his appointment in the first place. But obviously, the Premier now has taken the responsibility of controlling the crime aspect or the security aspects for the province. And I'm more than certain that he will be implementing certain changes that will add as a deliverable to protect the people. Obviously, the economy is critical as a deliverable because there has to be a creation of sustainable jobs, not cadre deployed people. One of the biggest problems the ANC had in the past is that to appease and please their own, they had to appoint people who are not fit for purpose. And that is critical. If we stop using the aspect of merit and meritocracy, we're going to fail ourselves again. because we find very incompetent people. And this has got nothing to do with race. As much as the predominant race in South Africa are considered black, although we are a non-racial society per constitution. But there are a lot of incompetents who are there holding senior authoritative positions who are incapable. That must change, radically change. There are a lot of people of other races, highly educated, capable, who are being sidelined. That has to change. So just taking those three aspects, we need to change that.
Thank you, Naren. I think you've highlighted some important challenges. We'll take a short break and we'll then deal with other challenges, including how local government will be impacted with these political changes.
Discover our new range of exotic perfumes, ouds and bukhur, straight from Dubai, now available at Wonder Dates. We stock a wide selection of Nabil and Chris Adams fragrances, perfect for your unique lifestyle. But that's not all. We also cater to your Islamic lifestyle needs with prayer mats, tasbeehs, dua stickers, bukhur burners and miswaks. Looking for herbal capsules and essential oils? Look no further. Experience the beauty of Wonder Dates. Shop now and elevate your senses.
اللهم احفظ المسجد الأقصى من اليهود الحاقدين اللهم أعد المسجد الأقصى إلى رحاب المسلمين اللهم وطهر المسجد الأقصى من اليهود الغاصبين اللهم عليك بهم فإنهم لا يعجزونك يا قوي يا متين اللهم منزل الكتاب مجري السحاب هازم الأحزاب سريع الحساب اهزم اليهود وزلزلهم يا قوي يا
The Outrage Slice of Life campaign. Since its inception, our Slice of Life has touched the lives of countless individuals through our distribution to schools, old age homes, orphanages, and deserving families within our community. This initiative has been instrumental in alleviating hunger. For only 9 rand a loaf, you will be providing a family with their daily staple, bread. Donate now on www.alansar.org.za or call Outreach on 031 208 1601.
The Al-Ansar Bookshop Lifestyle Center will help you design your wardrobe with its latest range of fashionable Islamic wear and burqas.
Mawla, 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 mere Mawla. Har saal talab farma mujhko. हर साल वो शहर दिखा मुझको हर साल वो शहर दिखा मुझको हर साल करूं मैं तवाफ़े हरम अल्लाह करम अल्लाह करम अल्लाह करम अल्लाह करम ऐ खुदा हज पर बुला ले पर बुला ले हाजियों में नाम लिख दे खुदा हज पर बुला ले हाजियों में नाम लिख दे काबे का जलवा दिखा दे काबे का जलवा दिखा दे हाजियों में नाम लिख दे लब्बैक अल्लाहुम्मा लब्बैक अल्लाहुम्मा लब्बैक अल्लाहुम्मा लब्बैक लब्बैक अल्लाहुम्मा लब्बैक अल्लाहुम्मा लब्बैक अल्लाहुम्मा लब्बैक आंसू आंसू कर रहे हैं हाज़री की इल्तिजा आंसू आंसू कर रहे हैं हाज़री की इल्तिजा अपने घर पर तू बुला ले اپنے گھر پر تو بلا لے حاجیوں میں نام لکھ دے اے خدا حج پر بلا لے حاجیوں میں نام لکھ دے مجھ کو پہنچا دے خدا پھر سے مطاف پاک میں مجھ کو پہنچا دے خدا پھر سے مطاف پاک میں اور مجھے زمزم پلا دے اور مجھے زمزم پلا دے حاجیوں میں نام لکھ دے کعبے کی رونق کعبے کا منظر اللہ اکبر اللہ اکبر دیکھوں تو دیکھے جاؤں برابر اللہ اکبر اللہ اکبر تیرے حرم کی کیا بات مولا تیرے کرم کی کیا بات مولا تعمر کر دے جانا مقدر تعمر کر دے جانا مقدر اللہ اکبر اللہ اکبر ہر رکاوٹ دور کر دے وسائل یا خدا ہر رکاوٹ دور کر دے وسائل یا خدا خانہ کعبہ دکھا دے خانہ کعبہ دکھا دے حاجیوں میں نام لکھ دے اے خدا حج پر بلا لے حاجیوں میں نام لکھ دے کعبے کا جلوہ دکھا دے حاجیوں میں نام لکھ دے لبیک اللہم لبیک اللہم لبیک اللہم لبیک لبیک اللہم لبیک اللہم لبیک اللہم لبیک اہل خانہ ساتھ اور حاضری مقبول ہو اہل خانہ ساتھ اور حاضری مقبول ہو ہر برس یوں حج کرا دے ہر برس یوں حج کرا دے ہر برس یوں حج کرا دے حاجیوں میں نام لکھ دے ہمیں خدا سے کر ہے زبانیں کانوں میں رس گھولتی اذانیں بس ایک صدا آ رہی برابر اللہ اکبر اللہ اکبر مانگی ہے میں نے جتنی دعائیں منظور ہوگی
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome back to News in Focus live on Radio Al-Ansar International on the frequency Durban 90.4 FM, Freedom Azwag 105.6 FM, and streaming on www.alansar.org.za. What I need to say to you this evening is that we basically, before the news break, discussed the KZN scenario. I know that news coming through is that there's a possibility of violence in KZN because of the current situation and the police are on high alert. So obviously we need to be vigilant and ensure that we're not affected by the possible violence, because we know in the past when there were issues of a political differences, that violence erupted. So I think sort of the police force and the security forces are on high alert. Having said that, the leader of the Democratic Alliance, John Steenhuisen, on Wednesday said, while it is premature to fixate on cabinet appointments, including who will be deputy president, his party would like to make a meaningful contribution in the 7th administration. So a lot of his MPs are anticipating to be appointed into cabinet positions. He said that the speculation has been rife that Steenhuisen or another DA senior official might take up deputy president position. But the DA leader told broadcaster Newsroom Africa that it's a bit early to discuss positions. There were talks about 2 deputy presidents, but that was prevalent only in the Government of National Unity in 1994, and the Constitution does not provide for a second deputy president. So how that will pan out, it's left to be seen. I know Paul Mashatile, is part of the cabinet and he's hoping to get the deputy president. John Steenhuisen has mentioned that I think those are the areas we would like to focus on. He said the DA representatives should occupy strategic positions in cabinet where they can best serve South Africans. I think the DA brings with it enormous experience in governing at a local and provincial level. I think we would like to focus on some key areas, things like infrastructure, the economy, how we lift people out of poverty, how we create jobs, and looking at drivers for all instances. So I think the DA is keen to assist in areas where there's a lot of support that is required. So for the next 7 minutes, I just want to stress again on KZN before we discuss the national situation and the economic impact of this GNU, because there's been positive sentiment in the markets, and our economist Hassan Mutala has joined us. So we will chat with Hassan after the news break. But I just want to continue. I noticed that the eThekwini municipality will be having a new mayor next week following Kolisi Kaunda's redeployment to the National Assembly last week. So obviously there's speculation by the speaker that by Tuesday next week they will appoint a new mayor, and that mayor is likely to be selected from some of the ANC Exco members. Some names are being touted. So obviously to improve the service delivery challenges that the eThekwini municipality is facing. Now, from the point of view of provincial government having some influence on how municipalities operate in KZN, how do you see that, improving service delivery? What influence do you think the current cabinet will have on improving service delivery in local authorities in KZN? Because most of them are close to administration, Naren.
Yeah. Look, with our three-tier government system, we must understand that it's a cascade process. National determines certain aspects of provincial, which determines aspects in local government. Now, the ANC had mayors, so-called executive mayors over the past, Santile Gumede, for example, Kolisi Kaunda, and they failed miserably. Whether we like it or not, they were not capable people of handling the situation, especially like in the executive metro of eThekwini. Whoever they appoint has to hit the road running this time around. How much the province will influence the appointment of the mayor is yet to be seen, because we know what the problems are. They know what the problems are. They just didn't have the competency or ability to actually determine how service delivery should take place. And the demands are quite critical in a metro like eThekwini, because we must remember a lot of informal settlements are interspersed within the formal sector. Or the formal housing and stuff like that. And that poses an additional kind of problems in terms of service delivery, because you cannot leave those people out. Athol Fugard might say people are living there, and they are. So what the new mayor has to do, and most probably it will be from the executive, but that is not really a necessity. It depends how they determine it within their internal elections and determinations. But I'm concerned, and as you mentioned, something about the finance aspect. We've got Mr. Francois Rogers from the DA who's going to control the provincial purse. And it's critical that the allocations now in terms of budgets will have to be in such a manner that all critical infrastructure, for example, health, social welfare, the job creation, all those things have to be revisited. They have to be changed, whether we like it or not. A government of national unity, like I will always say, is merely a transitional government. It's not a consolidated government for eternity. So whatever is going to happen in the next few months, and then probably until 2026, is going to be critical. How this new mayor is going to operate, how much of influence the provincial cabinet or government is going to have on the appointment of the new mayor is yet to be seen.
Now, very important is we need a sound local government. And at the moment, the bigger local governments or municipalities, are facing administration. We know eThekwini, there were proposals to get interventions here. And Msunduzi, we know, is currently under administration and in a state of collapse. The infrastructure is badly affected, and service delivery is at its all-time low. And then Kwaduguza in Stange is a huge problem, and all the other municipalities in the north and south, including Midlands as well. So there's enormous work required, because 2026 is around the corner, and there's going to have to be a turnaround strategy by the current cabinet, because ultimately that controls the heart of the political structures in KZN. And then you got on the other side, police are on alert for violence that could be looming from KZN, where MK and EFF may create disruptions. Fortunately, the inauguration, was not disrupted, and we obviously can anticipate some kind of disruptions, because there is unhappiness in the manner in which the cabinet was formed. Do you believe that the current premier, being newly appointed, will he be in a position to control any potential violence that may be imminent in KZN?
Look, that he has the security portfolio, obviously he has clout in that, besides being the premier. But in a situation as we experienced in 2021, the commander-in-chief is the one who deploys this, gets the security cluster involved. And our president, Mr. Ramaphosa, was, as I put it, absolutely impotent. I use the term, he did not have the testicular fortitude to actually deploy security forces to prevent what had happened. I mean, it cost us 20 to 30 billion rand. And hopefully, it doesn't come to pass that the political disruption will be of such a nature that it will lead to violence like it did in 2021. And my inside information is that from crime intelligence is that the country is ready this time around. It's unlike 2021, because the deployment of security forces as quick as possible, should something arise, will be there. Now, the MK, as we know, is really agitating because of its frustrations for not having the power to control the province. And yes, in any country, once the aggrieved political party does not get what it wants, it agitates towards instability and disruption. Hopefully, as you pointed out earlier in the show, if we get political maturity, and which is needed, then it will come to pass that we may just pass this period of time and then get into calmer waters, because everything at the moment is still volatile. While the election might be done and dusted, the consequences of the election is what we're going to be concerned about going forward. And that's where I think we should remain. But in terms of security, I'm sure Tami Ntuli will do a good job. 1994 to 2004, the IFP controlled KZN. They did a pretty good job. I visited Kwaduguza, Msundizi, Umshezi, Utikela municipalities. What a sorry sight it has become, from places that were very well kept, for a period of time, until, of course, those that we put in power disappeared and showed the incompetence.
Shukra, thank you, Naren, for those comments. We'll pick up on that discussion after the news break.
The chaos and destruction in the Gaza Strip is beyond comprehension. Virtually everyone is displaced, hungry, and in urgent need of life-saving humanitarian support. The Al-Imdad Foundation has been working tirelessly to address the health, nutrition, and water needs of the population. Our hospital, water deliveries, and hot meal programs are made possible with your support. Your donation, big or small, is a lifeline for those in dire need. Help Gaza survive. Donate online at alimdad.com or call 0861 786 243 for more information.
The views and opinions expressed by the guest and presenters of Radio Al Ansar are not necessarily the views and opinions of Radio Al Ansar and the Al Ansar Foundation.
An informative Islamic global perspective. This is Al Ansar News.
Making news this hour, the 19th of June, the news from Durban 90.4 FM, Peter Maritzburg 105.6 FM. Etegwini municipality is working on restoring electricity in Western region. America Monina. The Etegwini municipality says it is aware of the high voltage power outage currently affecting several areas in the Western region. The affected areas include Gillett, the Everton area, Kloof, Pinetown, New Germany, Westville, and Westmead. The municipality says it is actively working to resolve the issue. Etegwini says it has also dispatched engineers to a transmission hub in Westmead to attend to a large electricity outage. More news. Cyril Ramaphosa has been sworn in as the fifth democratic president of South Africa. He now officially begins his second term in office. President Ramaphosa had this to say earlier today.
We rededicate ourselves to the task of democratic renewal and social and economic transformation so that no one feels and is left behind. And so, as we enter another era in the life of our nation, the resilience of our democracy has once more been tested, and the people have spoken loudly that they choose peace and democracy over conflict, violence, undemocratic and unconstitutional methods. In their multitudes, in their voices that are many and diverse, the people of South Africa have voted and have made known their wishes, their concerns, and their aspirations.
Staying with the ANC's president, the DA Sivu Gwarube says they look forward to a government of national unity.
I think that what the president managed to do today is to really articulate to South Africans what the GNU seeks to do. And what we really appreciated by it is that not only was he clear, but he articulated a lot of what has been agreed to by the parties that are already party to the GNU on certain matters around the state and how things should work. And so we are pleased about that. But then, of course, the devil is in the details, because this has been good. And now we still go into intensive negotiations because two things still remain. One, the president still needs to constitute a government. And number two, the parties who are party to the GNU need to now put together a policy agenda for this government.
More news. 3 men from Soweto appeared at the Cape Town Magistrate Court today on charges of kidnapping and extortion. Now, the victim was attacked in an Airbnb in Woodstock, Cape Town last Friday. Swift action by a multidisciplinary task team led to the arrest of the men. The trio were believed to have been a part of a wider syndicate operating across South Africa. Back home here in KwaZulu-Natal, SANRAL has cancelled a multi-billion rands tender for improvements on a section of the N2 in Durban. SANRAL has cited changes in market conditions making the tendered prices not viable. The roads agency says 6 companies submitted proposals ranging from approximately 1.9 billion rands to over 3.7 billion rands. The work was earmarked for the highway from the Edwin Sales interchange to the south of the EB Clutter interchange. SANRAL says the decision comes after 3 years of evaluating bids. It remains uncertain if the agency will reissue the tender amid uncertainties. And finally, heavy monsoon rains have triggered landslides in Bangladesh and India, killing at least 15 people and injuring several others and displacing millions. Mohammed Samshud Duzar, a senior Bangladeshi government official in charge of refugees, say 8 Rohingya Muslims were among those killed by mudslides in the early hours of today. The disaster is the latest in a series triggered by extreme weather in South Asia and around the globe, with heavy rainfall and heat waves having killed many people and caused humanitarian crisis in recent months. In your weather, it's at 24 degrees. A quick reminder of our top story. The Etegwini municipality says it is aware of the high voltage power crisis currently affecting several areas in the western region. That's the
Welcome to Simplex Radio. Visit our showroom for the full range of car audio. Our TV department carries top brands with quality LED panels, full HD to Ultra HD, and now the experience of Super Ultra HD. Visit our theater rooms and transform your home with brands like Onkyo, Integra, Denon, Boston Acoustics, Yamaha, and more for quality audio visual experience. Now available, full range of home appliances. A one-stop shopping experience. Call 031 306 4029 or Kenilworth Park, 202 Brickfield Road, Overport. Simplex Radio, the name you can trust.
Are you looking for the ultimate in exclusive, luxurious living in Westville's most sought-after location? Kingsford Estate in Kings Avenue, Westville is an upmarket, secure, gated property development where every deal is crafted for elegance and sophistication. Homes priced from 3,995,000 Rand with spacious designer interiors. This is where dreams become reality. Contact us by calling 082-457-5976 or visit www.kingsford.co.za.
Africa. Education, health, dignity, empowerment. These wishes all begin with water. Africa Muslims Agency is committed to providing clean water to the thousands who still live without this basic human right. Support us in giving the best of charities. Provide a water well for 16,500 Rand or a borehole for 55,000 Rand in Afghanistan or 65,000 Rand in Africa. Gain Thawabi Jariyah and help communities to reach their full potential. Africa Muslims Agency, empowering, educating, inspiring.
This segment is brought to you by Kenfield Auto, your RMI approved service and repair specialist. 236 Brickfield Road, Overport.
Kenfield Auto. मेरे नबी प्यारे नबी सुन्नत तेरी दुनिया दी.
Sunnah a day, always drink water using the right hand. Shaitan uses the left hand.
Car won't start?
Kenfield Auto.
Noisy brakes?
Kenfield Auto.
Due for a service?
Kenfield Auto.
Kenfield Auto, the answer to all your car problems. Your service and repair specialist for your VW, Audi, Suzuki, Toyota, or just about any vehicle. Insurance approved workshop to handle them all. 236 Brickfield Road, Overport. Call us on 031 207 2399. Kenfield Auto. This hadith is brought to you by Continental Butcher Baker Delhi. Quality, freshness, and value. Our promise to you since 1992.
حديث أدي قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم آية المنافق ثلاث إذا حدث كذب وإذا وعد أخلف وإذا اؤتمن خان. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the signs of a hypocrite are three. When he speaks, he lies. When he makes a promise, he breaks it. And when he is trusted, he betrays the trust.
If you're looking for a delicious selection of freshly made baked goods, decadent deli treats, and succulent meats, there's no need to chop around anymore. Continental Butcher Baker Deli offers an award-winning service, presenting exceptional quality at competitive prices. Superb choice-grade lamb, beef, and chicken, mouth-watering homemade processed meats and gourmet marinades, and scrumptious baked goodies. Quality, freshness, and a money-back guarantee. Continental Butcher Baker Deli in Argyle Road. Visit continentaldeli.co.za.
Call 031 208 0951.
Shimmer, sparkle, captivate. Nothing less than a masterpiece. Droplets of gold inspires precious design. Platinum bursts with intricate freshness. And every pure diamond becomes more than just a girl's best friend. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, where timeless dreams become a reality. We tailor-make designer gold, platinum, and diamond jewelry. Trade in or remodel your old gold. Clad yourself with classy name-branded watches. We offer insurance valuation and free zakat calculation. Visit us at 534 Ridge Road, Overport, or call 031 208 9142. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, manufacturers of fine gold and diamond jewelry.
Welcome to Simplex Radio. Visit our showroom for the full range of car audio. Our TV department carries top brands with quality LED panels, full HD to Ultra HD, and now the experience of Super Ultra HD. Visit our theater rooms and transform your home with brands like Onkyo, Integra, Denon, Boston Acoustics, Yamaha, and more for quality audio visual experience. Now available, full range of home appliances. A one-stop shopping experience. Call 031 306 4029 or Kenilworth Park, 202 Brickville Road, Overport. Simplex Radio, the name you can trust.
Listen to News in Focus on Radio Al-Ansar, Durban 90.4 and Petermarisburg 105.6 FM every Wednesday from 8 p.m. with Yunus Sacoor. That's 8 p.m. every Wednesday. Radio Al-Ansar, keeping you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to News in Focus live on Radio Al-Ansar International, broadcasting on the frequency Durban 90.4 FM, Petermarisburg 105.6 FM, and streaming on www.alansar.org.za. I'm sure many of our listeners are still awake and listening to us attentively We're on the 14th of Zulhijjah 1445, and we know a lot of pilgrims will be returning from tomorrow with full of nur from the 5 days of Hajj from Makkah al-Mukarramah. And those that are receiving them, family, will be looking forward to meeting with them. This is a Mubarak month, of Zul Hajj, and we should continue with our ibadat, our zikrullah, our tilawatul Quran, our du'as. And very crucial is that, the elections took place in this month, and we know that we had, a government of national unity that's been formed, and the markets have responded positively to the outcome of the elections in terms of the government that is in place. The JSE yesterday rallied to a 1-month high to within a touch of 80,000 points, and currently it's sitting at 81,000, which is a phenomenal, increase. It's buoyed by hot money in resources, finances, industrial stocks, while the rand strengthened on peaceful establishment of the government of national unity. The risk on sentiment on the JSE was driven by expectations that the GNU will build on the relationship that the government has had with the private business sector in improving freight, electricity supply, and crime prevention, broadening the relationship to strengthen economic growth and the rule of law. Also, with all this, the Automobile Association has reported potential fuel decreases for July, with ULP 93 showing the biggest drop. These anticipated reductions are driven by lower global oil prices, but final adjustments by the Energy Department will be confirmed on the 3rd of July. South African drivers express cautious optimism about the relief this may bring. So, alhamdulillah, our people want to know in which way are their pockets affected, because once there's positive sentiment, then the economy of the country thrives, and then you have, economic activity taking place to the benefit of the communities, tourism increases, and then, the job sector or the employment sector opens up, and it attacks the unemployment and reduces the levels. Inflation decreases, and a whole lot of economic, fundamentals come into effect. And with me, I have our regular guest, chartered accountant, asset manager, economist, Brother Hassan Musada. Hassan, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to News in Focus, live on Radio Al Ansar.
Wa alaikum salam, Yunus. Always good to be here, especially, I was just thinking about it this time of the year, this time last year, alhamdulillah, I was on Hajj. And, when you're seeing what is happening, listening to what is happening on Al Ansar, and a lot of the regular updates we were getting from the, some of the alims and the like on the experiences, and it really brought back a huge amount of memories. And, that feeling that you get, especially during these days, is unbelievable. But always good to be here, and good to speak about, more other type of exciting things that are also happening both in our country and globally as well.
We've been, optimistic going back many a year that the economy will improve. And we were pessimistic about the ANC chances of gaining the majority and what would happen. And obviously they didn't gain the majority because of a decline in service delivery. And probably they did realize that they can expect this decline. And what the president has been harping for the last couple of months, even before the elections, they anticipated a decline. And this is why they spoke about the renewal policy. And they were grappling with how to deal with corruption, maladministration, and how to criminally charge those implicated. And it was a battle for the president and his team. But what made it easy for him is that, as we spoke earlier, many of them have defected to the MK. And we're not saying that the bulk of the MK are criminals, but obviously, a lot of people implicated in the Zondo Commission report are there, and some are still within the ANC as well. But I think he took this as an opportunity to really join forces with some solid parties, although fundamentally they have a few differences on policy issues. But ultimately, I think the ANC is quite satisfied that with this team in place, they will be able to drive improvement in service delivery, improve the economic situation, put certain politicians into key positions so that you could have a monitoring process, etc. And the market's already reacting. And a lot of our listeners out there may say, but is the short term, in the long term, what's going to happen? And I think Narayan has mentioned that Time will tell how the GNU will perform. In the show, I'm quite optimistic they will improve. They can't be any worse than what has happened in the last 5 years, because having been involved in local government and knowing how politicians work, as long as these politicians have got the interests of the country in place, and as our president is saying, and all these politicians, including John Steenhuisen, and let's take South Africa forward. Let's make the people benefit. Let's make the people's lives improve in South Africa. And we know in the last couple of months, there's been no load shedding, and what a pleasure. And we're hoping it will continue, and all this vandalism that has been taking place and all this thuggery and criminal activities will come to an end. Because ultimately what people want is they want to live in a safe environment. They want to live in an environment where, the services are affordable, the commodities and goods that they consume are affordable, and they're happy to live in the country, which is a peaceful country, and they're not under threat all the time, and with the high cost of living, etc. And there's a lot of criminal activity. So from an economic perspective, Hassan, I know you've been watching the markets very carefully. You've been watching the movements of the different indices. How do you see this situation? Because, we discussed off air that the Rand coming below 18 Rand, it was prevalent, more than 80 months ago at that level. So 18 months later, with a change in government, we're seeing positive results. What's your take in from an economic perspective?
Sure. So there's a couple of things. I think I'll just start off firstly in terms of looking at things globally, and then just honing it down back to South Africa. In the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've had three big emerging economies that had elections. You had India, you had Mexico, you had South Africa. Three big emerging economies. Prior to all those elections, there was if you look at the polls and the like, while the ANC was expected to be lower, nobody expected them to be really close to 40%. Majority of the polls, even right to the last day or two, most of the banks and the big major poll forecasters in the last few days before anticipated anywhere between 45 to 47% was worse than expected. So initially, markets reacted badly. Secondly, India, the day before election results came out, everyone thought Modi was going to have an overwhelming majority victory. Results come out, Modi did worse than expected. He still managed to retain power because he's gone into a coalition with partners, and he's retained power and has become the prime minister. India's markets collapsed the day after the results came out. But it has recovered a bit, but it came down again. Expectations versus what reality. Thirdly, Mexico, if we looked at it, the runner, which is a lady, first time becoming a woman president, but nobody anticipated a landslide victory that she had done. Nobody had anticipated. What made it more unexpected was she got an overwhelming majority. Now, there was expectations by the markets that she'll win, but not bad. So now there was concern that, when you get an overwhelming majority, like in South Africa, if you get more than 2/3, there's an ability to change the constitution or any type of laws. Similarly, concerns around that. Markets came under pressure. Their currency depreciated by nearly 8% in 2 days on the back of their results. So again, markets do react based on expectations and then what reality comes in as well. Now, one thing we must take into account, markets react, but decisions must not be made based on what we think the markets will do. And that's very important for this government of national unity, that they must not make decisions based on what they think markets will react to, how they're making decisions. At the end of the day, we're a sovereign state. We must not make decisions based on what a foreign investor yes, we must be cognizant of them, but we must take into account what is best for this country and what is sustainable for this country long term. The biggest issue we face as a country is we have the biggest inequality in the world. If you look at our Gini coefficient, a Gini coefficient basically tells you if it's higher, it means it's bad. If it's lower, mean it's good. Like countries like Norway and Sweden and the like, they have very low Gini coefficient. That means the disparity between the rich and the poor, there's a very low disparity. Here in South Africa, the disparity between the rich and the poor is massive. And that's the biggest issue we face. Our focus in terms of policy and implementation of policy needs to ensure that that gap between the rich and the poor needs to close. You cannot have CEOs of listed companies earning 50 to 100 million, whereas their workers are earning 200 rand per day. That's an issue. You want employment, and that's a key issue. You want to, but there needs to be some gap closure between the major rich and the poor. There has to be some wealth distribution, and that has to be, I think, importantly and positively for us, the policies of the current of the ANC, and hopefully I think that there will be continuity in this GNU, that majority of those major policies will continue. I think that will, and hopefully that is still a positive, I think, going forward. The big issues we face, and a couple of key issues, is that there will be policies around key areas: trade and industry, the finance and economic industry, the public enterprises, and even areas such as foreign policy. But especially public enterprises, trade and industry, and the like. Now, there's going to be major battle between the DA and ANC for positions within those cabinet positions. And I think the ANC is going to largely take majority of those key portfolios because they understand the importance of those areas. They understand the importance of policy being driven in those areas and continuity of policy. And while we've had the last 15, let's be honest, the last 15 years we've underperformed substantially as a country across many areas. But policies have been relatively good. It's the implementation and the execution of the policies that have been poor. We actually have fantastic, we have the best constitution, one of the best constitutions in the world. We have fantastic policies in many, many areas of our economy and the country. It's the implementation and the execution is the biggest issues. Now, I think there's a lot of positive sentiment that's coming around the country, both foreign and South Africa. But it's going to take time to see the positive impact of this going. This is, sometimes you open up a Coke bottle, the what you call is the gas comes out, and then it settles again after that. We're getting that effect of the Coke, the gas coming out, and we're going to see now how it settles and where it settles positively going forward. For me, I think there's one or two key issues I want to highlight. We need to ensure that from an economic and trade policy perspective, there needs to be a focus on execution in terms of creating an environment for people to invest here. Our biggest issue we've had in the last 15 years has been underinvestment by the private sector. We've seen some uptick in the last few years. Where is it coming on? Public and private partnerships have started to improve because of, for example, the alternative energy. We just talked about, Yunus, we just talked about earlier about how load shedding we benefited now in the last few days. One of the positives why we're actually seeing also is the fact that the private sector and households have spent so much on solar and other alternative energy that there's less impact on the grids. And there's more of that coming on stream over the next 12 months that puts less reliance on the ESCOM grid, and therefore you have more stability in terms of electricity. That will be fantastic. Stability of electricity means positive impact on GDP growth, and hopefully that will continue. If you see an environment where you're getting stability of electricity, stability in terms of crime and corruption, now that still remains a big challenge. But I think there's a little bit of progress being made there. But unfortunately, crime is still high. Kidnapping has gone out of control in this country. Murder rates are still very high. Those issues, those need to still be addressed. You get crime reducing at least 10-15% over the next year or two. That creates a positive impact both from tourism, but also importantly, an increase in terms of investment in the country. People love policy certainty and they love stability in the country, both local investors and foreign investors. And we've slowly started to see some of that. Look at Amazon. I mentioned it recently, last time as well. Amazon is spending a huge amount of money. They're the largest e-commerce country is now large e-commerce in the world has now established a base in South Africa. They're opening up a massive office and park in Cape Town. But importantly, they're driving business in South Africa. You're seeing other types of global businesses also expanding. The motor industry, the leisure industry. Club Med is opening up a massive resort here on the North Coast. So there is investment coming through. But we want also our local guys, the small and medium enterprises. They are major job creators. Don't underestimate that. We mustn't only just think that it's just the foreigners it's the small and medium enterprises that drive investment. And to encourage them, they want stability in terms of electricity. They want stability in terms of policy, but very importantly, less bureaucracy. When they want to set up a company, when they want to open up a bank account, when they want to get their municipal account set up and paid, they want it done efficiently and quickly. And that's where you need the municipalities and the public enterprises to be a lot more efficient. I'm optimistic that with this new setup and hopefully with the new appointments on the KZN side and the like, hopefully there'll be some improvements coming through in that part. That creates a platform for more investment. More investment means more jobs, means positive GDP growth impact, and importantly creates stability and reduces poverty and reduces the gap between the rich and the poor. So I think those are key focus areas. I think the platform is there. The concern still remains around KZN. When a party that has 45% of the vote is not in the governing coalition, it could create some instability. And that's the challenge, obviously, that we as KZN in particular, we face, especially in the coming months.
Naren, I want to bring you in here. Our listeners want to listen to a simplistic viewpoint on the political scenario in KZN. Now, we've been in local government and government for a considerable period of time. Pre-apartheid, post-apartheid, we know exactly how administration worked and why the decline. And you touched on it, on this cadre deployment and appointment of friends into positions that has crippled the municipalities. Hassan touched on some important aspects about economic, activity, how it's going to deal with job creation, how there's going to be a wealth redistribution, how do we close the gap between the rich and the poor. Ultimately, how it's going to affect the pockets of the people is what's crucial. When the price of petrol comes down, everybody is smiling because it impacts on the cost of commodities because transport costs decreases. And if the rand improves, that impacts on the price of petrol, the price of importation of goods. And ultimately, the consumer benefits from this because he's got more money in his pocket, he or she. But once there's job creation, then there's opportunities for people to be gainfully employed so that they earn wealth to survive. Now, we know in South Africa, we got huge challenges in terms of the informal settlements. In KZN alone, there's over 650 informal settlements comprising of more than 2 million people living in informal settlements. People have voted MK because they felt the ANC didn't deliver in terms of services, employment, etc., not realizing that this was a breakaway group from the ANC that may have caused the problem. So Ramaphosa is fairly confident that henceforth, with the renewal policy, together with his other partners in the government of national unity, he will start tackling the challenges. So ultimately, it boils down to national government has got a role to play, provincial government has got a role to play to provide grants and finances to local government. But the cost of living that affects the communities is linked up with local government because you've got the local SAPs and Metro Police that controls crime in the area. And then in terms of service delivery, you've got the municipality that provides that. And if they failed in water infrastructure, electricity infrastructure, and other services, like, for example, billing becomes a huge problem, then people are in strife. Because if you compare the Western Cape and certain other provinces that are doing well to KZN, we're way behind the 8-ball game. So will the sharp focus of the current national cabinet, which is to be announced, and KZN, because we're talking predominantly to a lot of KZN listeners, in the next 6 months, how do you see it panning out? Are we expected to see an improvement based on, because we can't expect these new politicians to perform miracles in the next couple of months. But obviously, they've been long in the block, most of these politicians. So they kind of been in the opposition and they've been fighting for improvement in service delivery. How do you see this panning out? Do you think there's going to be fundamental changes and improvements? Because until you don't deal with the cause of the problem, you're not going to be able to sort the problem out.
The term you use is fundamental changes that has to happen. Local government is the coal face of interaction between the resident and the ratepayer and government. And I just want to touch on what Hassan said earlier on. He's absolutely right. Small to medium term enterprises, the proliferation and the development of such enterprises will result in the improvement of the economy. Because I recall seeing some time ago, India had this policy of cottage industries where people were taught how to develop their own little businesses from home. Now, we've got a lot of that. I mean, if you take the Phoenix and Chatsworth, a lot of people have started little industries themselves. Even in the townships, they've done it. But one of the problems with those is a lot of that is not a taxable base. If it's a lot of cash transaction without being a registered organization, the government and the people miss out. But local government has to have fundamental changes. Whatever national government does, and obviously those will be based on national policies, it's sent down to provincial. And it is up to this new government of national unity at in the provincial legislature of KZN to redetermine or reconstruct. We had the policies of GEAR and RDP, which have failed the country. But we need people, absolutely competent people, to look at the country not in racial terms, not in previously disadvantaged terms, but in the improvement of the country. The moment you improve the economy, you decrease unemployment. There's a great chance it has a cascading effect in decreasing crime. And then you develop a society where, as you can see, as Hassan said, the parity between the very rich and the very poor starts closing in. Look, it's not going to happen overnight. And it's going to take many years, because the degradation of what the ANC has committed over this last 15, 20 years is going to take a toll long term. But the other problem is, I need to emphasize this. There was this culture of entitlement that came about with the majority of South Africans. When the change of government, and I'll use the racial terms here, it was from a white to a black. Hey, now we are the bosses. It's ours. That culture must change, because if you cannot see each other in similarity but in differences of the past, the progress towards fundamental changes is going to be a problem. And if you don't put, and I cannot stress this more, competent, capable people of controlling or in authority to determine policies, procedures, and implementing them, creating them in the interest of all the people, not just some of the people, then only will we see progress in this country.
We're trying to, forecast Ramaphosa's announcement of his cabinet, which should take place in the next couple of days, because he's sworn into office, and I'm sure in the next few days he's going to make that announcement. Now, the ANC had 40% of the votes, and the DA plus minus 22%. And the balance of the parties, the rest that are in the GNU. So do we see the split of cabinet positions from the deputy president down to the ministers 60, 30, 10? In other words, like how KZN has gone based on the percentage of the votes, it's likely that 60% of the positions would go to the ANC, 30% to the DA because they're holding 22% of that, the national vote, and 10% will be the balance, which I think the PA and the IFP. So obviously, when he's announcing the positions, he's got to consider the key positions because, for example, if you have a Minister of Human Settlements at a national level, he will work closely, he or she, with the provinces, ministers, provincial ministers of human settlements, who then deal with the municipalities, the portfolio chairs, so that, service delivery can be improved. That's a way national, provincial, and local government works. There were talks about having a common time where elections take place, but local government is taking place in 2 years' time. Crucial to respond to what Hassan is saying, that if you really want to improve job creation, do the wealth redistribution where the private sector has to get involved and generate employment opportunities for the people. And crucial portfolios are the trade and industry, public enterprises portfolio. Praveen Goran held that, and Ibrahim Patel held the other one, and then other portfolios were held by senior officials. So the DA being, very conservative in terms of economic development and also the sharp focus on controlling any kind of corruption and maladministration. How do you see Cyril making these appointments come, the next few days?
Look, I would have loved to.
I know you don't have the magic wand in front of you, but we forecasted a few weeks ago that KZN would not necessarily be run by MK, and there would be basically a takeover, which happened. And I'm of the opinion, perhaps you may differ, that Cyril will be very, very crafty in the way he makes his appointments to have a balanced cabinet comprising of good MECs or ministers, starting from John Steenhuisen to his existing guys. And remember, he has 18 MPs that are below 35 from the ANC Youth League as well. A lot of them were holding deputy ministers' positions, like the lady that spoke, Fasia Hassan, was a deputy in one of the portfolios. So some of them, they want to grow them up to become seasoned politicians as well. And he's also gotten rid of a lot of his potentially corrupt politicians. And Mantashe and few other guys had, marks against their names. So how do you see this thing panning out as a politician?
I would have loved to have been a fly on that wall when the discussions were taking place.
Take a swipe and let our people hear it.
Because
I think Hassan kind of gave a hint that, listen, there are certain key portfolios that need to be given to really people that can deliver.
Yeah. Look, obviously the strategic cabinet positions, as you mentioned, we had a weekend special in the Ministry of Finance, Van Rooyen,
that was when Zuma was in control.
Yes. Now, we don't want to reach a situation where we have other weekend specials.
Okay, let's go backwards. What are the key portfolios or the delivery arms of the national government? Look, public enterprises is key. Praveen Gordhan held that. That's up for grabs. Now, the Minister of Electricity is holding a particular portfolio. Would that be retained, and would public enterprises be separated?
Let me state this. This has been my opinion, and I have complained about this before. We have one of the most bloated cabinets in the world. And
so he may reduce his cabinet.
The DA was very vociferous about the bloated cabinet. Now that they're in government, actual cabinet positions, I'm hoping that they will influence the reduction in the cabinet, because it's a costly affair to run one ministry. And now with this latest introduction of the Minister of Electricity, we've seen no difference.
But he says he stopped load shedding.
Well, this could have been stopped without him being there, to be quite honest. SOEs, if we see the situation at our SOEs, of course, that is very, 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 very important. Now, I'm concerned about the Minister of Finance, because he, like I said, he who controls the purse controls the country.
And the existing minister has been quite successful thus far, Minister of Finance. Yeah. So you may retain him as well.
Look, you asked the question, will that formula be as the province was? I'm not sure, because the horse trading would have been very vociferous. There would have been major fights as to who should hold what. But Ramaphosa has to hold a cabinet and he must be under very severe pressure from his own party, because like you mentioned, those deputy ministers, many of whom I don't believe should be there. I believe that there's sufficient space for directors general to actually take the place of deputy.
I'm just going to give you a clue. I sort of went through it earlier. John Steenhuisen mentioned that the deal between them and the ANC almost broke down until they agreed on some fundamentals, one of which was key positions in the cabinet. Whilst he said that his objective wasn't, he says it's important that efficient people are put into key positions. So I presume at that negotiation, they may have discussed some key positions and they reached kind of an agreement. So I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't appoint some of the DA MPs into key positions in cabinet.
Yeah, look, take safety and security. The DA was very concerned over the period of time about safety and security, and if that position doesn't go to the Democratic Alliance, I'd be very, very surprised. You said the Minister of Finance held that position, but the DA would have fought for that position. I'm sure they would have dealt quite a deal.
Well, Malema was asking for that position as well. He wanted Floyd Shivambu, so he fell short. So I'm speaking about a 60-30-10 split. I'm saying with certainty that if we had to play, a predicting game, I'll be surprised if he doesn't follow that split. There were some talks about giving, the DA mostly the other positions, more policy and those type of things, and they would control the MECs. But I don't think that was the acceptable suggestion by the DA leadership, because they wanted to be actively involved in some key positions. I know the deputy president, some are saying that's not negotiable. But is Paul Mashatile capable? Because, he seems to be a very naive individual and has been put there because of the previous support base he had, and that may not necessarily apply now.
Look, South Africa doesn't really need a deputy president.
But you will have to appoint somebody.
We'll have to. He serves no purpose except a figurehead.
And would John Steenhuisen make a good deputy president?
Well, what can he do as a deputy president? What really can he do?
He fills in when Ramaphosa is on leave and what have you. But deputy presidents also hold a portfolio.
No, I do understand that. I mean, Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, who was Minister of Home Affairs, was once our president. When Mandela left the country, he was...
You see, I think I want to bring you in, Hassan, quickly. We're running out of time while we've been deliberating on that issue. I'm just going to give you a time to just think about it. Yeah. Hassan, if John Steenhuisen is announced as a deputy president, a white deputy president in the Republic of South Africa, the first in Africa, some white members of parliament may be given cabinet positions, how would the West react to a white, DA member being in the South African parliament? Would that create positive sentiment in the markets?
I don't know if it will create a positive sentiment per se. So, 1994, you had
de Klerk as a deputy.
So that there has been some precedent. Obviously, that was written into the interim constitution at that time, and there was differences there. I think, as I probably agree with Naren, as to some extent, as in the deputy president in terms of power-wise doesn't hold substantial power. If you look at when even Ramaphosa, when he was deputy president, there was not much he could do in terms of what Zuma implemented. Zuma actually, he did what he wanted to do, and he executed it during that period of time. They ruled a lot around what the NEC tells them. What the NC's hold, but that is change. That will change.
That will change because the NEC won't be making the decisions.
Correct. But NEC still will drive a lot of the thinking and around what the ANC does. We must still make no mistake about that. I think what will happen is we've got currently about 66 ministers, 30 ministers and 36 deputy ministers in the cabinet. Assuming they reduce it to 60. I don't think they'll reduce it less than that because now they have to accommodate the other parties. If that is the case, the ANC will still have minimum, if it's 60, they'll still have minimum, I think, 35. you're right. They'll have minimum 60% at least of all
And
of
the
that.
DA would probably have 20%.
DA will have 20%,
30%.
and then IFP will have the
But listen, the
balance of
PA was talking about the Minister of Home Affairs because they want to control all these illegal immigrants. Gaten McKenzie was talking about that. He was also talking about the Minister of Police. They wouldn't give him, maybe Minister of Home Affairs, they may consider him.
Correct.
But the key ministerial positions are Minister of Public Enterprises, Minister of Safety and Security, Minister of Mineral Affairs, Minister of Economic Development,
Correct.
those type of portfolios.
Correct.
Minister of Kokta, local government.
Right.
So what I'm thinking is that Cyril has to be wise in the announcement of his cabinet, and he has to be pragmatic in the way the ANC gets involved. According to those that joined the government of national unity, they don't want the ANC having the majority being dictatorial. They made that clear. And the ANC responded and said, we want to work together in the interests of the country. So one of the things that I'm sure they'll begin to root out is corruption, maladministration, and deal decisively with those that have been implicated.
I think one or two key things. Firstly, the president has to take into account two things. Firstly, senior people within his organization. He has to make sure that decisions that he's taking doesn't alienate him from people within his organization. Secondly, he needs to also take decisions that appease these partners that he's working with. So he's got a balancing act. I think the finance minister will remain. He's a successful finance minister. He's well respected internationally, and he's well respected within the partners as well. I think he'll retain that position there. I think public enterprises is potentially an area which they will want to retain it, but there will be a significant push, I think, from especially the Democratic Alliance around that particular area.
Because they had an interest in that
The trade and industry is another area where they will definitely. So there could be a compromise where one is the minister, but you could have a deputy minister from another party.
Interestingly,
and I think
you can come in here. Those ministers that held those positions have now retired, most of them. Like Minister of International Relations, ANC will want to retain because of the Palestinian issue. And Nalini Pardo has retired, and she's no more an MP. She may be a consultant of sorts. So they're going to have to identify somebody competent. Minister of Justice, they've got Lamola. He's still an MP. So maybe, he could be rotated or retained. Those MPs that are still there, that likely to get ministerial positions, you can think about them vis-a-vis from the DA who's there at national to decide how that 60 cabinet will make up of. And as Hassan says, 60-30-10 split, possibly. So some of the names for those key positions, Naren, have you know about them, or it will be a guess, or
look?
We're speculating, and why I'm speculating is I'm saying the government has to respond to improvement in service delivery by ensuring you've got competent ministers in those portfolios, because they're going to drive delivery down the line. This is how the line works. National, province, local government.
No, look, it will be a tough call to, determine or even predict.
Which key ANC MPs are still there that potentially can make the cut to become ministers, because a lot of them have retired.
Like you said, Lamola as Minister of Justice,
we're not sure whether he'll hold that portfolio, but he's one of the potential guys.
Yeah.
Which other potential guys are still as MPs?
Let me just get something off my chest on the one aspect. It is said that the president appoints cabinet ministers at his own pleasure. That's a term we use for presidents across the world. It's the very first time that a president will be appointing people not at his own pleasure.
It's a negotiated appointment.
Yeah. As Hassan said, he has to appease his internal mechanisms, machinery, and then he has to appease the alliance partners. So it's a negotiation.
But at that point, during the negotiation process of the GNU, I certainly believe that all those posts were put up for grabs, and there was some kind of an informal agreement to him that, listen, this is what we suggest and agree these appointments make. So he kind of knows, because he's not going to think about it now. okay, people are talking about the negotiating process going to take place and he's going to announce it soon. I'm not sure when he's going to announce it. But I'm sure they may have been before the GNU was signed with all the parties, including the smaller parties, who's going to hold what. For example, he gave Patricia DeLille from Good Party, the Minister of I think, maintenance, the portfolio, public works and maintenance in the past. Now, obviously, she's still in the mix. She's joined, with her 2 votes. Gayton joined with his 9 seats. IFP joined with whatever number they had. But the biggest are the ANC and the DA. So they're going to hold the major portfolios. Now, which are the names that are in the sort of process of being considered for appointments? Hassan mentioned a few. Which others that are, because these key portfolios, you have to identify competent people. And I think in KZN, we kind of know who the MPs were. We spoke about Martin Mayer and others. But at the national level, besides Stian Hazen, who else is there?
We may very well have new faces in the mix. For the simple reason,
in most portfolios.
Yes. For the simple reason is there has to be a complete revamp. I agree with you on the one point that the fairest way to have appointed cabinet ministers is on the number of or the percentages that you've obtained, because what other method are they going to use? They can't give the DA 60% of the...
and obviously the DA would have said, these are our nominees.
Yes.
If you say you got 10 positions or 15 positions, these are 15. Like, for example, the speaker and the deputy speaker. The speaker was from the DA.
Yeah.
And that lady had experience as a speaker elsewhere, and everybody was happy with that appointment. So obviously that was negotiated before.
Yeah.
Now it's different. He just announces. It's not like it goes through an election process.
Where the situation will have reached compromise is the deputy
president.
No, the deputy minister. So if a critical position was wanted by the DA or the IFP and it was not on the cards for the ANC, they would have compromised with the deputy minister position.
Because there is Shlabisa of the IFP that's also there, available.
Yes.
He was talking about being the deputy president as well. And then Musa Memane, being a young guy, he was also being touted for the ministerial position, although he's holding 2 seats in parliament. So obviously, there are potential names that may surprise us.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if Musi is going to get a cabinet position because
there were some rumors that he's been groomed for some position as well.
Well, if it comes, I'm not going to be surprised, but I wouldn't expect it because the major...
Which are the other budding stars from the ANC DA that could well end up with a very important portfolio?
This lady Mazzoni, who's been a bit of a controversial figure. They might want to put a woman up because, look, women have to come to the fray as well. Because
she's a legal person, isn't so?
Well, allegedly, there's been controversy over her.
Who else in the DA? There's John Stian Hazen, so he would be linked to something.
Look, the deputy president position, I think you might be right. Paul Mashatila might take that. He will definitely be given a cabinet position. Definitely. John Stian Hazen will be a minister of something. And I'm sure he would be going for the...
and Shlabise will also go for something.
Yeah, well, they will also have to get a cabinet position because they are, as much as a minority player, they are also part of that.
A senior guy, there is your friend Naren Singh as well.
Yeah.
But he's too old to get something, or is it possible that his name may come up in the list of IFP if they agreed on 3 cabinet positions or something like that?
Yeah, look, he may very well get one. And, he's been in the transport industry as a private entrepreneur. Who knows, the Minister of Transport might go to him, it might just happen. Although the party that I formed, Nixa, and the IFP have gone into a partnership. But we obviously don't have an influential role in determining the cabinet position. But I'm sure that might go to him. But look, I would like to see new faces in the cabiet. I would really like
people who got experience in the relevant portfolios.
Yes. And the Ministry of Finance, obviously, like Hassan said, is going to be going back to the current or the incumbent. That's fine. As long as we've got people who have got the real interests of the country at heart, who are not interested in cadre deployment within their ministries and just sit back on the laurels and think the country is going to work. We might make South Africa... we were a breadbasket of Africa at one stage. Look at where we are today. And that's why I believe that if Mr. Ramaphosa decides to appoint people who he feels is competent enough, the test of the time of their competency will come in the very early months, because they've got to hit the road running. Make no mistake about that.
So obviously, those announcements that will be made will take into account from hints from the political leaders that they're going to put the country first, and they want to be involved in positions that would influence service delivery. Hassan, your closing comments. We're running out of time. I know this subject, many of our listeners have been indicating that we called it quite correct, and I predicted when I spoke to our economist, our political analyst, Andre, a few weeks ago. Andre was giving me two scenarios. The ANC will get either below 42% or 45%, and he gave exactly what would happen. And I said between 40 and 42, so he ended off with 40. And I'm saying the DA would get probably 30% of the cabinet positions, ANC 60, and 10% would go to IFP-PA. So the 60 you're talking about, that percentage split, I think the important portfolios will be split, The key positions, probably the ANC Minister of Finance, Minister of Police, they would like to control. But some other important portfolios like trade and industry, etc., like how KZN province has gone. Surprisingly, the Minister of Finance went to the DA in KZN, but the IFP made the decision, but obviously Cabinet would have been involved as well. As Naren pointed out, and I agree, key is to influence local government service delivery and work towards 2026. And that is the crucial part of the work required between now and 2026, because people want improvement, the residents and the ratepayers, and they're also taxpayers. So what's your closing comments, Hassan?
Sure. We've got an interesting few weeks and definitely a few months ahead. Firstly, we hope and we pray that particularly within KZN, that there is stability and no massive political instability that's created by certain parties and the like over the next couple of weeks and months as well. From a national perspective, I think I'm optimistic that we're going to be pleasantly surprised that the cabinet positions that will come out will be relatively strong, and I think the appointments will actually have a lot of merit rather than the focus that we've had historically in many areas of cadre deployment. I mean, Minister of Education and the like, we've had a bad run for many years on that there. So I think we're going to have better appointments in this new cabinet. But there will be a tussle in terms of key areas. I still strongly believe that the ANC will retain a major part of the prominent positions within that cabinet, but they will concede in certain areas. Importantly, though, this will allow for a lot more efficiency and better execution. I'm positive that this will happen, and you can see that it can happen. You just look at certain of the appointments in other areas we've had in the last year or couple of months or so. There has been positive impacts, and I think this can continue, and this will continue with the potential new cabinets that will be announced. We don't know when it will be announced, but obviously within the next few weeks there will be a new cabinet announced. I think that they will only can go forward. I don't think we're regressing and we're going backward. And I think expectations are, and there's more positivity in there. If you go around and you speak to people and whoever, there's actually an air of optimism around. Concerns still may be around KZN, but nationally, there's at least still some. But the key issue is bread and butter issues. At the end of the day, people want to be fed, they want to be housed, they want to be sheltered, they want a better quality of life. And to achieve that, you need to create employment. And employment is not necessarily the domain of the government to do that. It's the domain of the private sector to a large extent. Government must ensure that the platform and the services that are meant to do that are running efficiently. Our transport network, be it the rail, the ports, and the road transport, the roads must be well, no potholes. rails must be running efficiently so we can be exporting a lot more to of our minerals and our fruit and the like to other countries and growing all those sectors a lot more effectively. That's what we need government to do, to create an environment that the economy can grow a lot more strongly and effectively. I'll end off on this point. India, that 11 years ago, 2013, was part of the Fragile Five. So when we came out of that global financial crisis in 2009, 2010, India, including us, was part of what they call the Fragile Five. Fragile Five because our government debt levels were shooting, our GDP was under pressure, and our trade deficits and our fiscal deficits were basically ballooning. India was also in that boat. India in the last 10 years has averaged more than 5% per annum GDP growth. And they're now moving towards getting towards the top 3 countries in terms of GDP. They're hoping to achieve that over the next 10 years. But within a short space of 10 years, they've done it. So the fact that we've got GDP at the debt to GDP of over 70% and we've got our challenges doesn't mean that we can't turn this around. It can be turned around. With just a bit of positive impact in certain areas and getting things right in certain areas, you would be surprised what impact it can have on the economy and what impact it can have on the population of this country.
Thanks, Hassan. Just to sum up and closing, the budget of the country and the provinces will begin to run more effectively. Obviously concern is raised about those provinces that have been dominated by either the ANC or the DA. But in terms of where there's a government of national unity, the budgets will be better controlled. Maladministration will be minimized. Corruption will be minimized because of the oversight role of the other parties. I think KZN in a way has been sorted, save for the fact that MK/EFF may create some degree of problem. But I noticed that they also politically mature and they basically agreed to become the opposition because of the way they operated, they could not take control. NFP is a kingmaker in KZN, and with their ministerial position, I'm sure they'll hang 10 there. So KZN is sorted. We hope the effect of this cabinet will start improving service delivery in the municipalities. National, it'll be interesting to hear how the cabinets. I strongly believe he's already decided on his cabinet through negotiation. He's actually agreed and negotiated on the key strategic positions between the ANC and the DA. IFP will hold a prominent position or two there, and also the Patriotic Alliance, because Gayton McKenzie was quite optimistic when he joined that, listen, I'm not joining just to become, sort of somebody sitting in a bench and accepting things. I'm prepared to assist in improving service delivery. So we're looking at better times ahead. And in the next couple of months, from the reaction of the markets, initial reactions are it's quite positive. I think our economist is quite optimistic that there will be positive impact. And then maybe next week in the show we'll be able to have a better indication after he announced the positions, because I would be surprised if he don't announce them within the next few days. Any indications when he's going to announce these cabinet positions?
Have an idea.
I think it's the next few days.
Well, it has to be ASAP because the country has to be running.
Correct. So I think he's inaugurated today. I wouldn't be surprised in the next few days he'll announce.
Who knows? Maybe tomorrow he might be.
Possibly.
Because these deals have already been made.
So it'll take him a few days. He'll announce before the weekend, and next week we'll be in a better position to look at the impact of those announcements and how the markets react. I think there's going to be positive sentiment going out, because must remember the West that controls the world markets are actually looking at South Africa as being one of the important countries in Africa for improvement. And we've got a strong mining industry and also agricultural, etc. So we are hoping that it's going to be a change for the better. On that note, we come to the end of News in Focus for this evening. I think just before I close, Naren wants to make a closing comment. Naren?
Yeah. I would like to say I'm cautiously optimistic. I'd rather use the word cautiously optimistic because it's the first time that we're going to experience an administration that is not a majority government. So everything that's going to come about is going to be precedent setting. But the point I want to leave the listeners with, and we must bear this in mind going forward, 2026, 2029, over 11 million people who were registered to vote did not vote. We probably might not have been having this discussion today. So, the whole aspect of elections and stuff depends on the people. It's the people's voice. And if people don't go out to vote, it's not that they can't speak thereafter, they can, but that's where the power lies, the power of the vote. And we are having this discussion today because 11 million people decided on the 29th of May not to put a cross on the ballot paper.
Well, probably with the GNU, they may change their mind going forward. And those that have voted, as Hassan said, they are hoping to benefit from the new government in terms of closing the gap in wealth distribution, because the have-nots are the majority and those that voted. So there's going to have to be a redistribution, and that is through job creation and opportunities. But ultimately, I always say that Almighty is in control. We have to make du'as that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides our leaders now that they're appointed, now that there's a government of national unity. And we have to pray and make du'as that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala assists the leaders to make the correct decision for the benefit of the people, because ultimately it is a trust that these people have been entrusted to. And as Cyril has said, the people have spoken, they've made their appointments, they want us to deliver for them. And he made some positive comments today that we're going to deliver with the will of the people, for the people. So I think if all the politicians are committed to that, we should have improvement in service delivery, job creation, etc. And our job now is to pray and that the government becomes successful so that everybody is happy to live in this kind of beautiful country. And as we spoke in prior programs, that we're still far better off than lots of other countries. And we pray and hope that the Almighty, creates that opportunity for improvement of the lives of our people. And serious issues like crime and safety, etc., are tackled vigorously. And there's no room for criminals to operate in this country. I think everybody has the democratic right to live peacefully, to earn peacefully, to coexist in this world, and to assist one another, and also freedom of various activities, including religion and other things. And as the minority communities, we must be protected. On that note, that brings us to the end of our program for this evening. Don't forget that, it's a month of Zilhajj, that we should continue with our ibadat, keep up with our 5-time salah, do a lot of charitable work. The Al-Ansar Foundation is involved in many, many key projects. We continue with the humanitarian work. And those that want to get involved and assist us, please do so, whether you want to donate to us in cash or kind, you want to get involved in projects. So please do so and get involved so that we can improve the lives of our people. We will be back on next Wednesday, hopefully with more important information like who are the different ministers at a national level and how the government will be performing going forward. Until then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
اللهم احفظ المسجد الأقصى من اليهود الحاقدين اللهم أعد المسجد الأقصى إلى رحاب المسلمين اللهم وطهر المسجد الأقصى من اليهود الغاصبين اللهم عليك بهم فإنهم لا يعجزونك يا قوي يا متين اللهم منزل الكتاب مجري السحاب هازم الأحزاب سريع الحساب اهزم اليهود وزلزلهم يا قوي يا عزيز. The views and opinions